A global study has found that 82% of companies are making business decisions based on stale information. Only 23% have systems in place to access real-time ERP data, despite 86% are saying that they need real-time access to make smart decisions. My name is Paul Nashawaty, and I'm the practice lead and principal analyst at theCUBE Research. And I'm joined today by Justin from Starburst. Justin, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, great. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate you coming on and really jumping into this really important topic. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and introduce Starburst as well?
Sounds good. I'm Justin Borgman, co-founder and CEO of Starburst. Starburst is a data platform for running analytics and building applications that can access data that lives in data lakes, as well as other data sources in the enterprise as well. So we're the creators of an open source project today known as Trino. It has its roots originally at Facebook. And in fact, it's how Facebook does their own analytics and builds their own data-driven applications. So it works at tremendous scale and is able to, again, provide access both to data in lakes as well as federate queries to other data sources as well. And that's part of what makes it unique.
Yeah, Justin, super relevant, especially with the topics we're talking about. You know, as companies are rushing to get to this AI in their applications, developers are under a tremendous amount of pressure to work in real time with distributed data. So tools like what you're talking about with Starburst really lets teams access the data from across different sources, really without moving that data, helping them to make it faster, smarter decisions. And at the same time, thinking about how data is a product is changing how developers are approaching systems design and ownership. With AI-ready infrastructures and tools, it's really set up for easy testing, and teams are now better equipped to build smarter, more scalable, and more responsible applications. You know, Justin, one thing I was recently talking to an organization, and they were saying, well, we put out some applications and the data went out and it was wrong, and it wasn't our fault. The AI did it, right? And it was like, well, wait a minute, you did it, right? So, but you know, I think it's important here to kind of let's level set and start thinking about these consequences of using right data and accessing the data. And let's talk about how Starburst, you know, query engine really changes the way developers are accessing the data across the data sources, different sources, and how does that help build faster, more AI-powered features?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when building, you know, data-driven applications, particularly in the AI era, where we're thinking about embedding AI capabilities in the applications that we build, whether that's chatbots or other interactive experiences, AI is fundamentally a data challenge. And more specifically, it's accessing the right data to provide the right response from the LLM, from the AI. And that's, I think, where a lot of people get hung up, is really trying to provide access to the right relevant information and bringing to bear all of the relevant context to get the most accurate answer from the LLM at the end of the day, and avoiding those hallucinations that are very common. And I think in the enterprise context, this becomes especially challenging because you have to deal with access controls at the same time. Not every user should have access to all of the data that's available. And so you need to really, you know, bring together multiple disciplines to build a successful AI-driven application around governance, access controls, and then, of course, you know, the performance of the system and how fast it's answering those questions.
Absolutely, Justin. And when we think about that, we also have to take into consideration compliance, regulation, and governance with data. Data is the lifeline of the business, right? That's what it is. The applications are great. They're pretty. They make the user experience very, very nice, you know, and they can come out and create, you know, user experiences that work well. But with data being treated like a product now, you know, I'll ask you the question, should developers rethink how applications designs are really taking ownership in the way that data is used in their applications? Is that something that they should be considering?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for anybody who is new to the concept of a data product, this idea really originated from some thinking around a new paradigm called data mesh. A woman named Zhamak Dehghani had written sort of a manifesto about how to think about distributed data, and it actually has had a really lasting impact, I think, on the industries, especially this one particular pillar of data products. And really, when you think about data as a product, what you're doing is thinking about the the end result, the business outcome that people are going to be deriving from that data product, and owning that experience end to end. And that involves creating a curated set of data, so bringing the right data together that may actually originate from multiple data sources, applying the right governance to that. So again, the fine-grained access controls, row level, column level, data masking, being able to audit, who accessed what data, and bringing that all together as a product to be consumed. And in the beginning, that consumer was primarily individuals writing ad hoc queries or leveraging business intelligence tools to create dashboards and draw charts and graphs of that data. But I think increasingly in the future, the consumer is going to become those AI agents themselves who have the same requirements essentially of an end user of finding accurate, curated, and governed data from which to inform the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, when I think of my practice, I think of a lot of the focus in my practice is built around the CI/CD pipeline and anything across the SDLC, right? And I made a comment earlier about the fact that, I was talking to an organization and they used some AI and they put out some wrong data and they go, well, it wasn't our fault, the AI did it. And, and that's not really acceptable, right? And what you're talking about here is there's new AI features, there's new data sets that need to be accessed, and there's different ways. Now, I know we went into the kind of the details around data mesh and such, and how that works with connectivity. I think there's kind of two questions I have here. One is when we look at the main challenges by safely testing AI features, how can teams really incorporate that experimentation into the CI/CD pipeline or a regular part of their development process? And then the other thing that might kind of dovetail into this question as well, but Justin, I'm thinking about bridging the gap between old and new. Right? Like what happens with those existing systems of record that the data sits there? It was built a way that there's compliance and governance and regulations around that data. It's protected in that system. But then when you extract it out and pull it into different areas, like using different connectivity methods, sometimes those policies don't play. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is very important for enterprises leveraging enterprise data in their AI applications. And again, I think you need to approach it from a central access control perspective. So even though you have distributed data, you need to ensure that the access control policies are moderated and governed in a central way so that they're applied to all of the data that they access. And that's really the way that we've built it at Starburst. Those access control policies are defined and then applied through every query that's run through the system, depending on where that data is accessed. And you're right, increasingly what we see is that the data leveraged in AI can exist anywhere. It could exist in a legacy system on premises. Maybe it's a Teradata data warehouse or an old Cloudera Hadoop environment. Or it may leverage, newer data generated in operational systems like Mongo or Cassandra or perhaps a Snowflake data warehouse in the cloud. And regardless of where it lives, I ultimately need to be able to gain access to that in a governed way so that I can bring it to bear to answer the questions for this new AI application that I'm building. And so that's precisely the types of challenges that we work to address. And we do it by centralizing that access control layer so that every query is running through the same access control system.
Yeah, and I'm gonna double click down on this a little bit, because what I'm seeing in our research is, there's a tremendous amount of growth of applications because I'll call it the citizen developer is real. AI is allowing the citizen developer to build new applications. So instead of having the professional developer create the applications, now we have the lines of businesses, and so you have finance people, marketing people, sales people creating applications using AI, and they're accessing this data. So I want to double click down into a couple of things you said. When we think about these more and more applications being used and building with AI, we should really kind of think about what Starburst is doing here, because as you're moving and accessing this information, building monolithic systems is no longer an option, right? You really have to have the holistic view across your entire data sets. So when teams are building these new apps and using AI, what should they keep in mind when building these, accessing the data systems? And, and you mentioned things like security, scalability, and support access, but let's double click down on that and talk about the different types of data, because that matters when we're looking at these applications. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And, at least the way we think about the world, we're like a data management platform or data analytics platform without storage. We look at all other storage as though it's our own, whether that's, again, a relational database system, a data warehouse, operational key value store, a data lake, and open formats, whatever the case may be. And again, applying that governance and then executing those queries as quickly and as high performantly at scale. The other factor to take into consideration is the cost of the data processing that you're doing, because as you mentioned, there are more applications than ever before, more interest in AI. AI itself is expensive. The compute and the energy and the cost, to whatever LLM provider you're happening to use, are all consuming resources for you. So you have to make sure that the data management foundation underpinning all of this is not also costing you an arm and a leg. And so the solution here is really leveraging open formats as much as you can. And specifically, Iceberg has really become the de facto standard here for storing your data. And if you're not aware, Iceberg is an open format. It was originally developed at Netflix, and it naturally pairs with our open source query engine, which is called Trino. And the combination of the two effectively provides an open source derived, low cost, data management, data processing layer. And so we see a lot of our customers leveraging Iceberg as that common storage format, and then being able to work with that data in a variety of ways from different applications and different compute engines.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Trino and Iceberg, because that really kind of goes into my next kind of question here. When we start talking about, these new applications being built, and, a lot of these organizations have built and spent, almost an eternity building these big data sources that are out there. And they're not going to just abandon those data sources. They're going to use those data sources for their next generation of what they're building and how they're moving forward. But they also need to have actionable insights. They need to take an understanding of what that data is doing for the business and how the applications are using it. So Justin, I'll ask this question around developers, right? And when we take, maybe Trino and Iceberg kind of fit into this kind of conversation here. But when we think about how developers can work better with data, as well as AI teams, how do they make sure that the applications are using high quality data and really to support the company's bigger data goals, right? How do they ensure that they're really looking at the right data instead of just grabbing the wrong data and then actionable on that? How's that happening?
Well, I think this comes back to that data product thinking that we talked about at the beginning of your show, which is that thinking about data as a product in these curated building blocks where there's a clear owner of that data product, much the way that you have a product manager who manages a feature of your application, you should have a product owner of your data product. And that creates ownership, a singular sort of point of contact for having those types of conversations about that particular data set and ensuring that it is the right data, that it's fit for purpose and suitable for the needs that you're building your application towards. And that becomes your interface, your human API, if you will, to the data product owner to ensure that, again, that you're leveraging that data product in the right way. So I think this data product thinking becomes really foundational to this new wave of application development, because it allows you to really abstract and create these building blocks from which you can build the rest of your application.
Absolutely. Super exciting times. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's continuously in the changing. It's happening very rapidly. The information consumption of this information is incredibly important. So Justin, we're coming to an end here. There's a lot that we touched on here. This might be new to some people. This might be, they might be people that are very experienced in this. What would you advise the audience here that, to learn more about, what we're talking about here, accessing the data sources, whether they're new in their journey or if they're really experienced in their journey? What would you advise them to do?
I would advise you to experiment. And, we try to make that as easy as possible on starburstdata.com. Our website, you'll find a link to try out Galaxy. Galaxy is our cloud hosted product. You can get in there, connect to your own data sources, start to run queries, and start building your own applications. Those applications can send SQL queries. There's also a REST API. So you can start to experiment, and there's a free tier. So you don't necessarily have to sign up for a committed contract on day one. You can actually experiment and try it out and see what it's like to run queries on different data sources and start to build this experience. And at least in the thread of AI that we've been talking about, we are imminently releasing our own MCP server. So you can now interface with Starburst through that means. And I think the vision that we see in the future is really going to be one of multiple agents all communicating with one another. And again, we want to be that sort of data dealer at that foundation layer that provides access to these agents that you develop.
Oh, I love that you brought in the MCP and agent to agent kind of connectivity at the end there. That's really, really important and really relevant to my audience here. Justin, this has been great. I know that there's a lot here to talk about. I know the audience can reach out to us and contact us. Thank you for being on. You've been your insights and position on the data sets is really, really interesting. And thank you for joining me on the show today. And a big thank you to all of you that have tuned in. We really appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But that wraps up this episode, and we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. Whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social. If you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect, you can always reach out to me at paulan@siliconangle.com. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.